North America, 1755. The French have their enemies, the English trapped along the North American coast, unable to move. Hostilities break out in North America along the Great Lakes between the militias from the colonists and the French army, plus their Indian allies. And the French and Indians enjoyed many early successes against the militia, but eventually were defeated when the British army finally did show up and successfully fought a land war, taking Quebec. During this time, a young George Washington would receive much of his military experience, including the importance of how to retreat. The British gained complete control, kicking the French off the continent, therefore securing all their land. George III, the king at the time, had ambitious plans and had to pay off much of the debt generated by the war, while Parliament agreed with him, had their own plans for the colonies, including taxes of Navigation Acts, Stamp Acts, and the Expansion Act, which they did argue with the king heavily over who got to control the colonies and the taxes. They also limited the expansion of the colonies, therefore, even though they fought a war, they did not gain any territory and therefore ignored it. But the most important thing was the trade, also called the triangle trade of very oversimplification. It was anything but simple, had many different branches and loops, but mostly it was about moving goods back and forth and labor. And in labor, we mean the slave industry and the slave ships, which were absolutely terrifying during what was called the Middle Passage because of the terrible conditions they placed the slaves in, trying to maximize the profit enjoyed by the slavery, because they also were used for the cheap labor of sugar crops and worked so hard their average lifespan was only 4 to 6 years. Now, the colonies also enjoyed illegal trade with many other countries in many different ways, which, once again, angered the king for the lack of money and personal defiance against his rule, and also angered Parliament, who also needed the money and decided to do more taxes. The Americans responded by smuggling, which they were very good at, and when tried by American juries, never found guilty, which of course angered Parliament, so they changed the laws and arranged trials at sea by British officers where they were always found guilty. The colonists, angered once again, demanded boycotts of all British goods, grossly crippling trade and taxes. It grew so bad over taxes, the famous picture of the Boston Massacre between soldiers and unarmed civilians, where the soldiers were found not guilty. But most importantly, shown here, was a black sailor, Crispus Attucks, was killed fighting for freedom. In 1773, it boiled over to the Boston Tea Party led by Samuel Adams, protesting the tax on the tea monopoly enjoyed by Parliament, which passed the Intolerable Acts of 1774, a series of acts for taxes and money and getting debt, which led into 1775. The Continental Congress forms with our future founding fathers of our country.